Hello and welcome to this video for new mentors. This is specifically for new mentors or mentors that have come back to being a mentor that want a bit of a refresher. Maybe you trained to be a mentor about 10 years ago, and you feel like you want to have a little sort of just get a bit more up to date with mentoring theory and practice than maybe was available 10 years ago. My name's Fee Branner. I'm going to introduce myself in the next slide. It's going to move on. There we go. So quick introduction. My name is Fee Branner. I'm the senior mentoring lead at the University of Sussex. I oversee quality control of mentoring at the University of Sussex and all the training that we send out to partnership. Now, this particular video, I've tried to make it so that it's aimed at mentors who are looking after initial teacher education, student teachers, so completely brand new student teachers. But also, it might be useful to those of you who have early career teachers in their first and maybe even second year. So I'm going to use certain phrases I go through. I'll explain that in the next slide. But if you see this icon, this little book icon, there's quite a lot in this session, and I don't want to speak too much and take up too much of your time. So if you see that icon, you might want to pause and read a bit more and look at some of the guidance sheets that I've made to support our mentors. So this could be, you could be watching this as a Sussex student teacher mentor. You could be watching this as an early career teacher mentor in any school, not necessarily with the Sussex Partnership if you've managed to get hold of this video. And you're very welcome wherever you're watching this from. You might also be one of our partner schools that we work with around the world. So if you're from Jersey, hello, and from anywhere else that we're working with, you're very welcome to the content in this video. We're making it available on YouTube so anyone can watch it. Now, mentors, your role is essential to the profession of teaching. We could not survive without mentors. It would be a disaster. It would be about copying what somebody does, being on your own, learning in a vacuum. And that's not what our new teachers need. They need an awful lot of guidance, support, and knowledge from their more experienced colleagues. So you are on the front line, as I would put it, that you are often the one person that stands between your new teacher doing well and your new teacher not doing well. So you have an essential role, and they value your inputs enormously. So that's why it's important to learn how to do it well and maybe understand some of the pitfalls that might be ahead of you. So I'm going to start with what the role of the mentor is. For some of you that are already experienced and are coming to this as a refresher, that you might be able to go through this pretty quickly. But for those of you that are new, this is an important section. So it is about turning your professional knowledge that's in you and in your brain and getting it out. Now, I'm going to make it, there's a real theme throughout this video that what we don't want to do as mentors is tell our novice teachers what to do. As much as possible, we want to ask them what they think they should do. And then if it aligns with your ideas, brilliant. And you're like, oh, great, that's exactly what we would expect you to think at this stage of your development. So your main job is to let them know what to do in school, but explaining it really, really, really clearly, or as I've said, asking questions. So in simple terms, your job is to guide your new teacher. You're their scaffold. You're the one that makes sure that they don't fall over, that they don't fall off the top, okay? To begin with, it's going to be a lot to do with procedures and policies because that's so important for a new teacher to understand how your school works. You're going to help them plan lessons if you've got a brand new teacher. If you've got an early career teacher, not so much, although they are new to your school maybe. So you will have to show them how your school has schemes of work and plans lessons. You're going to observe them, regardless of whether you're ECT or ICT, and you'll be giving them different bits of feedback, be that verbal or be that written. And I'll talk more about that later on in the video. Now, your job has a duality, which is often why it can be sometimes quite challenging, is that you are there to be side by side, walking along with them, guiding them, but encouraging them to find their own ways of doing things. But you're also a critical advisor and assessor in both of the roles, either ITT, ITE, or ECT. And that can be sometimes where conflict can come in. So making sure you get to know them at the beginning of the relationship, building that, what's the word I'm looking for? Respect between each other and trust It's trust. If they trust you, they're much more likely to be able to deal with any kind of criticism that you might need to deal with later on. If you start off quite cold and distant, that criticism is not going to be taken very well, or that advice isn't going to be taken very well. So I'm just going to flick through these quite quickly. Obviously, everything we do here at Sussex is research informed. So I am going to be weaving in quite a few bits of research as I go through the video. These are old. The role of being a mentor is an ancient one. But there was a real raft of research that came out end of the 80s, beginning of the 90s that's still really useful and pertinent today. So you're managing their development. Responsible is a good word that's there. You nurture, that's an important word. Observing their classroom practice and giving them feedback, all pretty basic, really. Now, I like this one a lot, this one from Fletcher, guiding, supporting, smoothing the way. So even though we want to be very question driven as a mentor, there's also quite a lot that we're going to have to do as a mentor that is quite directive to begin with, where there are certain situations that you're like, oh, you don't want to do that. No, no, definitely do it like this. We're not there with the sink or swim attitude, or there's a hole, it's up to you to get yourself out of it. That's not the role of a mentor. We are enabling and reassuring, okay? Sponsoring, encouraging, counseling. Caution with that one. We'll talk about boundaries later on, about where you need to draw the line of what is acceptable emotional support for you just as a colleague, and when it starts to become too much and you are then taking of the role of somebody else that either at university or at school should be dealing with that role. You are not their therapist and you are not their counsellor, but we are involved in counselling in how would you manage this situation. We'd ask them, how would you manage that? I think that's a good idea. Off we go. But ongoing caring relationship. Now, I put a little book on this one because it's the DFE definition. It's quite an old one as well, so caution here. We may well get a new definition coming out soon, although there's no news about that at the moment. It's a formal responsibility. It's not a casual relationship. It is formal, and it's bound by quite a lot of guidelines. So you must be really careful as a new mentor to understand what your role does entail, because it is Ofstedable, okay? For those of you watching this in the UK, you will understand what Ofsted is. Modeling high quality teaching and being an ambassador for the profession. So we are here to make sure that they realize that coming into teaching is wonderful, not to turn them the other way. Now, wider considerations of the role. Now, it is a journey, and each novice teacher is quite obviously on their own unique path. So you might have, as an ECT mentor, you might have had student teachers before, you might have met different ECTs before, and you've got a view of what you think it should look like or has looked like. It's good experience, but every single one of our new teachers has got their own prior knowledge, their own experience, and their own personality, and they're going to do it differently. Some very green to begin with, but they learn very quickly. Others with lots more experience, but doesn't mean they don't have troubles. So it's treating everybody with their own, with their own set of circumstances. Now, this is my theme: be as non-directive as you can. We want to elicit their knowledge. It's almost, we all know that, where someone tells you to do something, you're like, well, I knew that. And if you gave me a chance to say it, I would have told you that I knew it. It's disempowering. It's disempowering. So we've already got our knowledge. We don't really have anything to prove with that. You've been chosen or volunteered to be a mentor because you've got a certain set of knowledge and skills. We don't have to impose those on our novice teacher. We're there to tease them out. Oh, good idea, lovely. And that's when we're going to start to get our own stuff back, is the more they give us. We're like, oh, I hadn't thought about it like that. Isn't that great? Fresh perspective. So, and it's really empowering to be allowed to go, oh, I've got an idea. And you go, yeah, let's do it, right? It is all about dialogue. We are dual professionals. Yes, you've got more experience, but they are a teacher too, and they're going to be able to do things in their own way. So it is about discussion and dialogue. It's not didactic. It's not go away and do this. So they're a co-thinker. We're in this together, right? Like that lovely picture there. We're doing it together. It's not hierarchical. You're not their boss. You're not their line manager. Well, you shouldn't be. It's a bit tricky if that's the case at school. You shouldn't be their line manager. You should be on side, to quote Hobson, right? So on side, on their side. And I've said before, unique journey. So, summary of this section, right? Guide them, right? Now you're going to be quite directive to begin with. We're going to talk about that in a sec. When they're new, they obviously don't know where your policies are, let alone what's in them. So there is quite a bit of guidance. You will have to meet with them regularly to discuss and have conversations. Discuss is the key word. It's not didactic, it's listening and it's dialogue. You will be co-planning with them to begin with, not so much if you're an ECT, but yes, if you're a mentor of a student teacher, you must observe them. You must do quality written feedback. We've got a section on that. Engage in post-lesson discussion, not feedback for that discussion. Feedback is one way, right? So with the written feedback, it is you're handing it over to them. They don't get to discuss it. Well, you will talk about it later, but it's not open. They won't be able to annotate it and change it, right? It's your views on that lesson. But the dialogue is different. That's both of you discussing it, you asking questions and then them responding to it and feeding back to you. Yeah. You will be giving them advice. So you're going to be advising them and you will be assessing them. And there's no way around that. There is an assessment. And that's where some of that conflict bit can sometimes come in. But remember, good relationships eases conflict. Okay. And also conflict often brings resolution. So section 2, characteristics of a good mentor. So what qualities do you need to have? And I'm sure you've all got them, but I'm going to make you feel good that you're like, oh, I'm the right person to be a mentor. I've got these qualities. So little book on this one, but I'm just going to whiz through it very quickly. Innovative, open, accountable. I like this one in the milling. Willing is a really important word. If you don't want to do this role, you're probably not the right person for it because your new teacher's going to feel that. Nobody wants to be made to feel unwelcome. There's that innovative word again, enthusiastic, energetic, inspiring, and guiding. Okay. Because without that and without supportive and role model, it's going to be very difficult. It is going to be very difficult. Okay. So here's a summary of those words. We do need to care. I've put little stars by those, right? So caring, you need to be able to build relationships and you do need to be willing to share. If you love that year 9 class and you don't want anyone else to have them, don't hand them over on your timetable because the chances are you've got such a good relationship with that year 9 that they're not going to take that new teacher anyway. They're not going to accept them. So be really careful what you're willing to share and what you think would be good to share. Okay, another one, just very quickly on this. This is guidance that we give to schools about helping them to choose mentors. Mentors should be really good in the classroom themselves. If they're not, it's going to be very difficult to ask questions of give guidance of your new teacher. Do they know about adaptive teaching, how to change a scheme of work or how to modify the curriculum for pupils, particularly with special educational needs who need advanced adaptation techniques? That's really important. We've talked about the qualities, capacity. Now, we're going to be honest here. Everyone's going to think, I just don't have time, all right? Because the time is not being given freely and it's not being paid for. But by capacity, I mean that, if you're very busy as a deputy head, a head of year, you have a job that removes you from the classroom and you get a lot of cover coming in, you're not going to be the best person to be a mentor because you need to be there. So you need to be there at the beginning of the lessons with them. Otherwise they go into it, they already start the lesson with a bit of a problem. So if you're regularly not going to be around, it's not necessarily the most suitable role for you as a mentor. We recommend sharing about 50% of the timetable if you've got a student teacher. So that needs to be able to happen as well. But obviously that one is negotiable and you can discuss that with us. So a little note about boundaries. This is really important. It's important to get to know your new teacher. It's important to find out about them. We're going to talk about that a bit later, but something that's really important is to set your boundaries. When teachers are new, they have lots and lots of questions. They can take up a lot of time, but if we give them too much time, we're missing out on that empowering aspect as well and that agency that we want them to have. So what we don't want to end up with is learnt helplessness, where we're giving lots of answers, we're giving them lots of time, and then when they go to another placement or they go to another school and someone isn't doing that for them, like, well, hang on a minute, someone normally does this for me. It's no good for them. It's no good. So the boundaries aren't just good for you as a professional to go, no, these are my email hours. This is when we're going to meet. Keep your questions for our meeting. This is how it's going to be. They protect your time, which is essential, but it also is going to teach them really good professional habits. So if you need more advice about that, do ask whoever your contact is at Sussex. It's very important as a mentor. So, number three, there's got to be something in it for you, right? There's got to be something in it for you. And there's lots in it from being a mentor. Having been a mentor for years myself and a professional tutor and a university tutor now doing lots of mentoring activities, I learn a lot from doing it. And there's some excellent research actually, and some of it quite new, that's nice, about what the benefits are. And some of them are really quite obvious, but they're worth spelling out. It really does improve your classroom practice. When you're observing somebody else and you're sat at the back or the side of the classroom and you're seeing, you normally see the pupils from a completely different angle. So you're at the front and there's desks and you can't necessarily see everything that's going on and you don't have a million eyes. So you can't see everything that's going on. You will when you're sat at the back because you're not actively teaching with the cognitive load that goes with that. You're observing and watching, and you'll see the reactions of certain children to the teaching that's going on with your new teacher. And it really is transformative. You're like, oh, they're not, oh, I don't even think they can see the board, right? And see, yeah, it just really works. You might see your new teacher teach a scheme of work and think, oh, that's not working so well either. Or that lesson's brilliant. I'm never gonna change that again. It's marvelous. Just going to adapt it for new classes. So it really will improve your practice. You should see innovative teaching practices. Now, you won't if your student teacher or your early career teacher follows your scheme of work to the letter with no deviation and no adaptation. You're not going to see any innovative practice because they're not going to be giving it to you. They're delivering the scheme of work that you likely wrote. So it's really important that your new teachers come in and invent stuff, invent resources, invent different ways of doing it, try different orders of teaching, try different pedagogic techniques. Otherwise, they're not going to learn how to be the creators of schemes of work in the future because all they've done is follow someone else's, and you're not going to learn anything. So that is really important. You should feel an increased enthusiasm. Talking to an enthusiastic new teacher should be infectious. Collaboration is always good for our pupils. It helps them. Could improve your subject knowledge, although that one, it's questionable, isn't it? It'll help you in your reflection skills to think about how you teach things, communication skills, especially the art of listening. We're going to talk about this in a bit, but teachers aren't always the best at listening. We're excellent talkers. We're not always fabulous at listening. I'm not saying that's all of us. I'm sure there's some really good listeners out there, hopefully, who are listening to me. So you're going to really be able to hone your communication skills. Technology knowledge, particularly if, like me, you're pretty limited. The new teachers come in, they teach us new stuff. It's marvelous. I've learned so much. I've said before, you're going to learn about your own classes sitting at the back. It really is quite illuminating. Your effects beyond the classroom. So when you're dealing with new teachers, you are managing, right? You're managing someone's time. You're managing their emotions sometimes. You're managing their reaction. So that's good. It should have status. I've been banging on about this for years. It is the most important job for a new teacher. Not what we do at universities, that's not the most important job. It's mentors that's the most important job. And it should be seen as such, right? So if you feel like you're not getting the status that you deserve in school because of it, you should talk to your management and go, do you realize how important this job is? It feels good to shape the future of the profession. It really does. It's a really fulfilling role to do. And once your novice teacher has reached a certain standard, you get time back because they're planning the lessons, delivering the lessons, assessing the lessons, and marking any assessments too. So you will start to gain a bit more time. Now, this is really important. And I've been doing a lot of research about this over the last couple of years, really ramped it up this year as well, the amount I've been looking at and trying to get under the skin of what is different for us in teaching, because there's all kinds of different definitions out there because there's mentoring in business, there's mentoring in healthcare, there's mentoring everywhere. But for us in teaching, it's got a unique perspective. So how is it different? So this is a great quote. The terms mentoring and coaching are often ill-defined, conflated, or even used interchangeably. Let's put an end to that, right? Mentoring is what we do all the time. So, from you get your novice teacher at the beginning of their training year or their ECT year, you're going to be their mentor and kind of carry out mentoring activities, nurture, care, support, guide, induct, and advise all the way through. It's about sharing, it's quite directive. Mentoring it is quite directive because often they ask you a question like, well, how would you do it? You're like, well, I would do it like this, right? We're running out of time. I've got to do a bit of mentoring. But when we've got some specific goals to achieve, so you've observed a lesson, you think, we're going to work on adaptive teaching for that child over there, right? I'm going to call her Emily. It's just the first name that's come off the top of my head. So Emily, she's a weaker reader and she's struggling with this particular topic that you're teaching. And you're like, we've got to think about adaptive teaching for Emily. That could be your focus for the next few weeks with your novice teacher and go, right, we're going to do some coaching. I want you to talk to me about Emily. Tell me everything you know. And we sit back and we listen. And then if you realize that your novice doesn't know much about Emily, then you might have to flick into slight mentoring mode again. Okay. So coaching is about specialist interventions with specific goals. Now, you can do some of it right from the beginning. Of course we can, but there will be a shift where it's more intense, sort of 90% mentoring, 10% coaching in the first month or two. And then you need to gradually change those percentages as you go through the year so that we're doing much more coaching and a little less mentoring. Because by that point, do they really need to be told? You should be able to go, well, you should kind of know where to go and find that by now. Go off and find it and come back and let me know. We're not spoon feeding. And sometimes mentoring, as I've seen it in schools, can be a little bit spoon feedy, like I've got to tell them what to do. No, the best mentors are predominantly coachy, but with the nurture and support and long-term goals that a mentor would have. Okay, so emotional support is mentoring, coaching is professional challenge. Now I've put C3PO up there because C3PO loves to tell you things. We've got to resist that. We want to ask, not tell. If it matches what we think, we can say, oh, that's great. That's a great answer. If it matches. And if it's different, think. Just because their answer is different to what you were thinking, does it mean that it's not going to work and it's not right? It might still work, okay? That's a great idea. It's one of the nicest things anyone can ever say to you in teaching. That's a great idea. Let's run with it, right? Little diagram here for us to look at. So it's the difference between non-directive is asking and listening, powerful listening, right? Sitting on your hand listening, not interrupting, genuinely listening and hearing what they're saying, right? And empowering that and agree, go, yeah, great ideas. Let's go with that. We don't want to be in telling mode. Now, we might well be at the beginning. All right. So right at the beginning of this relationship, we're very likely to be quite directive. Okay. But what we want to be is in this non-directive initiator. So when they're new, you're going to introduce the topics, but maybe then introduce the topic, but ask lots of questions. So we're going to talk about this today because I think that's important based on your observation. But then we go, right, tell me what you already know. What have you learned at university? What did you learn in your first year as a student teacher? Tell me what you already know about this topic. And then we've got them in, okay? Ask them what they know. Eventually, we want to be encourager, where we're going to the meetings and going, right, what do you think is your focus for the next few weeks? What do you reckon? Yeah. Reflect on previous lessons this week and let me know which direction you want to go in. And then we're going to use more non-directive skills to ask more questions. I hope you can see the difference. We don't really want to be advisor where we're leaving it all to them and then also being really directive. That's pretty much the opposite of what we want. Okay. Just a couple on here. It's a really lovely diagram from Holweck. The differences between mentoring and coaching. The first two are similar, but also not that relevant to us really, apart from master. Of course we are. Now it's advocacy for mentoring. So you're like taking their arm and going, come on, I'll go and show you this, right? When we're in coaching mode, it's, well, where do you think it is? Where should you go and look? Who should you go and talk to? All right. And that's why quite often we need to be very strong mentoring at the beginning of the relationship, moving to coaching. Sharing and telling is mentoring. Asking and goal setting is coaching. So we're moving from directive to less directive as we go through the year. Now, There's lots of phrases about coaching, and one of them is instructional coaching. And when I was doing all my reading, I thought, oh, I don't really like that so much. I don't like instructional sort of, I don't know, it feels like a sort of oxymoron to say instructional coaching. Now I read this brilliant paper that talked about responsive coaching. Okay. So because we're mentoring all the time, we're going to coach. We're like, oh, I've got an opportunity here. I'm going to respond to what you've just said. I'm going to respond to what just happened in the classroom in that observation, and I'm ready for some responsive coaching. Now, it's deep and demanding, and it needs curiosity. So you have to sit there and go, oh, what could I ask you about this, right? Elicit, not tell. Suggestions come from the novice to encourage their growth. Sensitivity and affirmation. So if somebody gives you an idea and you go, oh, that's not very good, that's not going to work, you're going to shut them right down. Okay. So in the same way in a classroom, you would, a child answers a question and you go, no, you wouldn't do that, would you? You go, okay, let's bounce that on. Let's have a think about that. All right. Do not interrupt. Let them talk. I know we're time poor all the time, but if you set some time aside for these conversations, 20 minutes, half an hour, whatever it is in your mentoring time each week, where I am actively listening to you, phones off, away from email, private space, it really will help your novice to become more independent, and then you will get more time back anyway. If you invest in this good listening, in this time, in this advocacy about empowering your new teacher, you will have an easier ride as a mentor in the long run anyway. So invest in the listening and you'll get a lot more out of them. Okay. So good listeners, powerful questions, encourage, avoid sharing knowledge. If you need to, you need to. If we start for coaching a conversation and they dry up and you need to switch to mentoring, absolutely fine. Absolutely fine. There's no problem with that. So when could you go into coaching mode? Now, some of it can be straight away. You meet your new teacher, you ask them a bunch of questions. That's in coaching mode, right? Because you're not telling them anything, you're eliciting, all right? Actively listening, and really in those first conversations, do actively listen. During meetings, you're going to set aside some time. It's your space now. You can even say, I'm in listening mode. I just want to hear from you. I want to hear your thoughts about this week, and then that might generate some questions. Co-planning meetings, get them to expand on their reasoning. Well, why have you chosen to put that there? Not just, yeah, that'll do, or that won't work. Why have you put that there? Explain to me why that section is like that. And post-lesson discussion is crucial to be in listening mode. We want them talking a lot more than we do about the lesson they've already delivered. Okay, they've taught it. Don't tell them what happened in it. They tell you. Okay, so brilliant. I hope that all makes sense about coaching. And I've made some guidance sheets. So those of you that have access to our Padlets can see them. If you don't have access to our Padlets, you just need to ask me. You just need to email me. My email was at the beginning. So quick bit here about how novice teachers develop. I'm going to do this really quickly, because some of it I've already said, and some of it is obvious. It's stressful learning to be a teacher at the beginning. They all start from different points. I've said that. Often start quite idealistic, particularly student teachers, where they think they're going to be rather marvelous, or they hope they're going to be rather marvelous, and go, oh, it's going to be, and their wishful bit of their brain is like, I'm going to arrive, and all the kids going to love me, and I'm going to be amazing. And then reality bites a little bit the more they start to teach. So they have a little dip in their confidence. Development is never linear. I've put never linear. Teachers go, oh, I'm improving. Ooh, something takes a dip, right? So they learn to spin some plates, and then they have another one they got to spin, and then a couple of them drop off because their brain can only cope with so many at one time. They must feel that they belong in your school, they belong in your department, and they are welcome. All right. So important. So important. They won't actualize. Learning happens while they're doing. That's why it's so important to be in school the majority of the time, and doing other learning at university, at a college, and other spaces. The in school is really important professional learning. They will move from a very inward, often, very, it's all about me. And some of that is to do with the stress and the feeling of not knowing enough. And it is very stressful going to the classroom to begin with. We all know, we were there. If you didn't find it stressful, brilliant. I certainly did. I found it very stressful to begin with. And you think about yourself a lot and how, because it's how it's making you feel. It's understandable, isn't it? You've got the adrenaline pumping. But then as we start to move them through the year and we have more coaching and soft, lovely, careful, nurturing, mentoring, they can move more to a pupil focused perspective and outward stance, which is when you know you're winning. Again, have a little look at some of these little simple charts I've done to summarize the development. Again, here, this is another set for you, idealism, survival. And I'll show you this little chart, this graph. There's a really famous one by Moore, 1999. And it's actually based on early career, so NQTs, but it works exactly the same for newly qualified, for ITE student teachers, where we go from, it's exciting, anticipation, and then it's like, oh, hang on a minute, this is pretty hard, but I'm getting through. And then there's the bit where the what do we call it, the honeymoon period is over with some of your classes and you go into a bit of disillusionment. Now remember, this is one view. This is done, it was a big piece of research by Moyer looking at lots and lots and lots of new teachers going into the profession. But not everybody's going to be like this. Obviously, this is a model, and all models are wrong, is a phrase we use in science. Okay, so they are to be critiqued, but it is a classic model. And having trained an awful lot of teachers in my time, it feels pretty good for the majority of them. The month shift, the time shift, but it's pretty good. But remember, not everyone's on the same path. Again, it's just a little book one for you to look at to talk more about the stage of their development. Now, whiz through this. This is how we build IT curriculums. We're given something called the ITTECF, Initial Teacher Training and Early Career Framework. It covers everything from the beginning of teacher education all the way through to the end of the second ECT year. So it lasts 3 years, okay? It's divided into 5 core areas that make an awful lot of sense: behaviour, pedagogy, curriculum assessment, and professional behaviours. Now, it is a compulsory entitlement, not assessment framework, entitlement of all new teachers to have their education covering every single bit of the ITTECF. Now, in Sussex, we use that as the core, and then we build our curriculum around it with a big, big emphasis on inclusion. Excuse me. So we link every single facet of the ITTECF to inclusion, which is the strand 5 one, all right, which is about how we adapt for our different pupils. It matches exactly to the teacher standards. So at the moment in the UK, we follow the ITTECF during the training year, the education year for us, then we assess against the teacher standards. They are, when you look at them, almost exactly the same. Now, the wording for strand 2 are very different. That's the one, if you wanted to have a look at how they're different. The others, I'm going to be honest, are pretty much the same. But the teacher standards are old now. They are really quite old. And the ITTECF, it gets adapted much more regularly, particularly in the areas around adaptive teaching. So you'll see much more granular wording in the ITTECF than you will in the teacher standards. But that's enough on that. It's just to let you know where we come from. Right, settling your new teacher in. Okay. So they're nervous, they're new, but they need knowledge. All right. So as a mentor, we're going to give them induction to the school. We're going to make sure they know where the policies and procedures are. You don't have to read them out to them. You just show them where they are and expect them to read them, and then ask them questions about it to check that they did. Don't always presume that everybody does what you advise them to do. Learned that the hard way over the years, actually. Don't presume that everyone's got a diary that they filled in with their deadlines. There are things that you need to be reasonably directive about at the beginning, like, I want to see this, I want to see that. Now, vast majority of new teachers, they're bulgy backpacks, they've got pencil cases that you could only dream of, but there are some that need that little bit of extra organizational support, and that will be mentoring. It's hard to coach someone in organization. Quite often it needs to be really quite directive, like, you need to do this, it's important. They do need somewhere to work, and they need that sense of belonging that we talked about before. It's a Brown and Everson paper. It's fantastic. but it's some space, to feel like this is where I can lay down my roots. Very important. I've heard some unpleasant stories about that in the past, so please make sure that they're made to feel welcome. They will need keys. If they can't get into their room and they can't log on, how are they going to be independent and empowered? They can't keep waiting on you to do stuff for them. And the same applies to access to data, pupil data. They need that, or you're going to have to sit next to them even more, and you're going to have to do a lot more mentoring if they can't have access to it themselves. How is your curriculum designed? And that's not just here's the scheme of work. In your school, you've got your way of teaching. You've got certain things that are part of, we always do this at the beginning. But you want to ask them to encourage you to, why do you do that at the beginning? Why have you got a starter with 5 questions at the beginning in every single lesson, right? Let them know why it's there and how they can adapt it to suit different classes. Because as we know, set schemes of work don't work for everybody. They should know when your mentor meeting is happening every week, and please don't move it. It's really unsettling to them, and they will just try and find you in other ways if you do that. Timetable needs to be fair. Not that many this is for initial teacher education. ECT, you've probably got no say in their timetable, but it needs to be fair. Not too many teachers. It's going to be too many people to negotiate with, right? No known really, really challenging classes. That's really hard when you're new to deal with that, especially if there's a lot of additional parental contact, so extra conversations with heads of year and all that kind of stuff. We don't want that. We don't want that. Although a little bit of that is okay, obviously. Plan their teaching. So you're going to pick up this class, then you're going to pick up that class, and show them where the curriculum is for them to have a look at. But again, we don't want them following the curriculum verbatim. They must learn to plan innovative, creative lessons. And then arrange for some observations of key colleagues, because to begin with, they don't know who anyone is and who's good to watch, right? So, running your mentor meetings, that first one is so important. Obviously, I'm stating the obvious there. You need to find out, ask lots of questions about them. There's not something that makes you feel really good about yourself and makes you feel really, really welcome is people asking you lots of questions. So if you sit, as if the new student teacher or ECT is sitting there and you're the only one doing all the talking, doesn't make you feel really good about yourself, because you want to know that that other person is interested in you. Yeah, my mum's amazing at it. She does nothing but ask questions, and she makes everyone feel really special. So I know what it's like to be on the end of that, right? So ask them about their interests and passions and things they might be a bit scared of, and then you can get an inkling of they're a bit nervous, but also some of their woes are sort of what's the word? Disproportionate. Yeah. Unpick any additional needs. There is no point finding out stuff in December of the training year. It's really, really late by then, and by then we've probably got a problem. So be really open with them and go, do you know what? This is a school that's great at making adaptations for our pupils. We're also really good at making adaptations for our adult learners as well, and getting them to open up, because there's still a lot of stigma around certain elements of mental health and neurodiversity that we want to not winkle at them. They're an adult, they can choose when to tell us, but letting them know that you're on side and you're there to support. Subject strengths and areas that need development, we want them to be honest about those. We want them to be able to free to ask questions about how the school is run. What's your school like? What kind of school is it? What are the parents like? What's the environment like? It's important to build this picture about the school and the kids. And I've mentioned boundaries already. Outline your expectations and do not be fuzzy. All right. Oh, well, it's okay if, when you actually don't mean it. Don't promise Sunday contact. In fact, just don't ever promise Sunday contact. Weekends are precious beasts, right? They mustn't get in the habit of contacting you on a Saturday and you reply. I mean, in fact, if they contact you on a Saturday, you should really say, please don't ever do that again. Yeah. That you're not there to work for them at the weekends. They might have to work weekends because they're a new teacher. And we all know that everything takes twice as long, 10 times as long when you're new, but you're not. Right. And they should have this to look forward to, that actually you shouldn't be working at the weekends. So Regular mentor meetings, they'll happen at the same time each week unless something really chronic happens. Might be during the day if you're lucky enough to get time during the day to do it, but normally it will probably be after school. Privacy is important. The staff room is not the place for this because otherwise they're not going to open up and they're not going to tell you where they've got problems. Avoid negative language. Now, we slip into this very easily. It's simple as, oh, well, that lesson was so much better than that one you did last week. Now, sounds kind of innocent, but then they're like, oh my God, well, what was so bad about that one last week? Yeah. Use phrases. I would make it more about the children. So, did you notice how much work Emily did today? Tell me how you got Emily to do all that work today. So, focus on the positive element rather than the comparison of something in the past that wasn't so good, because we're trying to be more developmental than that. Ensure that the mentor meetings are recorded by them, not you, by them, and your mentee, your novice should do this. So, co-planning, really important part. Really, this is for ITE mentors, not really for ECT mentors, although it could be really nice when you have an ECT to do some co-planning. But co-planning is essential. Co-planning is not, there's the scheme of work, write a lesson plan, I will skim read it, off you go teach. That's not co-planning. Co-planning is sitting down together and going, right, what have we got coming up? What lessons? Let's talk about this year 9 class, all right? Because we've got a lot of additional needs going on in this year 9 class. Let's discuss what your ideas are. Their ideas have to come first, because then you can go, well, isn't that just what was in the scheme of work that is already written? What are your ideas, right? What's coming from your brain for these children based on what you've learned at university, what you've observed, and what you've learned about these children, right? They're not coming to you in a vacuum of knowledge. They've come to university or whatever training centre they're at. They've got some knowledge about planning. They've got their own curriculum knowledge. They shouldn't need to copy a scheme of work. They shouldn't need to. They should be able to, at the very least, adapt it, and even better, go, I've got another idea. Can I try it out, please? Yeah, it's really, really important. But with you, because doing it on their own, they don't know what works yet. I mean, I hope they'll be able to experiment safely and have a go and see what works and what doesn't work. So here's a little summary for you. They need to see the process of planning. Showing them a lesson plan and going follow it, pointless, absolutely pointless. They don't learn how to plan by observing. If you got them to observe a lesson and gave them a lesson plan and went, just write down what you think is going on and what that lesson plan looked like in reverse, it would be very difficult. Probably a good exercise, actually. So you must talk to them about planning. How do you plan your lessons? How do you start them? How do you know when to assess? How do you know when to ask questions? It all needs to be articulated, not just observed. So, student teachers, I've mentioned that one before. It's not just checking their plans, it's discussing with them. And it's so important. Please do not skip co-planning. Now, how to get them teaching to begin with for ITE, not for ECT. ECTs will come straight in and teach their timetable. Start small. They've got to observe. They've got to write lots of notes, professional notes. Make sure they know that the notes that they write in every single world, if they wrote something unpleasant, that person will find it. And they shouldn't be writing anything unpleasant anyway. All constructive, about adaptive teaching. How do certain pupils respond to different ways of delivering content? Or how do we get the pupils to be independent learners even better? Okay. They can act as a TA, and that's really important that they get engaged in dialogue with pupils about how are you doing this? How are you getting on? Are you finding that easy? How can I support you, right? About questions. But observing is also really important. It's really important to watch the teacher, watch the impact on those pupils. They can then plan a starter or a plenary, do a little section, again, from their own brains, not from the scheme of work if possible. They might deliver a worksheet for you. And then when they do start teaching properly, every single lesson to begin with is on a full lesson plan. It should come to you 24 hours in advance so that you can just look at it. If you've engaged in really good quality co-planning, you've already seen what they're going to do. You're just checking it over to make sure they didn't do anything silly. Now, some people do 48 and 72. It's just too long. It's just too long. Now, particularly if you've got student teachers with neurodiversity or anxiety, anything more than 24 hours is going to be incredibly challenging, and you're going to add to their load, right? You're going to add to their problems. So we do need to be adaptable. We do need to adapt to them as well as them to us. It's a two-way street. Now, unless you see something wildly awful in the plan, don't fiddle. Let them teach it and then reflect. You might note which bit you didn't think was going to go perfectly, right? And then afterwards go, you know, I had an idea that that didn't work well. How did it go? Let's talk about why it didn't go so well, because it's much better if they learn from their, they're not necessarily even mistakes, learn by where things go a little bit wobblesome rather than just don't do it like that. Okay. Co-plan, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that written feedback, observing. Now, this is one of the most important things that a mentor does. So you've settled them in. They know you care about them. You've built a brilliant relationship. You've introduced them to everybody that needs to know. It's all going swimmingly. And now you've got to observe them. And this is where we really have to flex our skills. We have to be able to watch a lesson. And it can be quite difficult when you're a new mentor and go, oh God, there's just a million things I could comment on. The thing to do is to relax, relax and breathe in the lesson and go, how was the entry? Start small. I always think, right, how's the entry going? Oh, I like it. Are the kids filing in nicely? Yeah, they are. They're doing something good. Let's whack that in there, right? So nice entry routine. And you can ask them later on, what made you bring them in like that? What made you say hello? Why did you say hello? Why did you ask Jimmy about his weekend? Ask those questions in the post lesson discussion, because we're focusing on something they did well. The question shouldn't just be, so what went wrong over there? That shouldn't be what we do. The good stuff needs to be written down, and questions about the good stuff needs to be written down too. That's really useful. So question, why did you put all the books out on the desks? Little bracket, that was a nice start. Yeah, so you can ask a question and then later on give them validation. So in the written feedback, here we go. There's a few research ideas, a little book, but avoid overemphasis on class management is what I wanted to say to you at this bit, because if that's all we're talking about, we are missing, particularly when they're new teachers, brand new teachers, we're missing all the brilliant prep that they did. They went away, they made a resource, they did loads of research, they wrote a beautiful lesson plan, they thought about adaptive teaching. Even if it goes completely wrong, let's not unvalidate that brilliant amount of work that happened before. So we do need to look at their plan that'll be in front of them while we're observing and think, there's some really good stuff in here. Yeah, okay. You're not using the behavior management system, and that's why it's not working. So you're putting all this effort in, and until you get the behavior management system sorted, this is almost pointless, although it's not, because it's great practice. So do try and think of what have they done well, or what have they attempted to do well, even if it's not executed brilliantly. Now, we do need to write very detailed notes in a lesson observation, because if you look at this number 4 down here, they can't listen very well in a post-lesson dialogue. They're focusing on their questions to you. They're focusing on their answers to your questions. And it's a big deal talking about an hour's worth of teacher performance, right? So what they need to be able to do is to go away and read detailed written feedback. They're like, oh, I see that. Yeah. Quietly in a reflective space. So it does need to be really detailed. And I'm going to show you a not so good one in a minute so you can see the difference. Okay. So you need to establish the focus for when you're observing. I mean, to begin with, it could just be, I'm just going to observe you for a couple of lessons. Let's see how we get on. But once you get going, it's like, I'm going to be looking for modeling. I'm going to be looking for, you might have one that is specifically about behavior management. You might well do in following the policy. You might have one, and I'm going to look at your questioning today. That's my main focus, so that when they're planning it, they know what they're working on. So this is part of the coaching routine that we can get into. This is, we're zoning in. Here's our focus. Let's go away and have a good go at it. All right. And they know the rules. So establish the rules. Now, the other bit is, are you moving around? Are you TAing? Now, if it's the formal observation once a week where you're writing the form in, I would recommend you don't do that unless you absolutely have to. If it's a high tariff class and you've got to be moving around, that's fine. But they still need their proper written feedback done. So be careful about that balance. But in a normal lesson where you're just informally with them, observing them, you could say, well, it's a practical lesson, or we're doing this debate, or whatever it is. Where would you like me to go? What's my role in this lesson? Detailed notes I've explained. Now, what I haven't done is typed or written, both fine. It doesn't matter. But if you are going to handwrite, it does need to be legible. They have to be able to read it. And remember, you can't edit it. Now, when I handwrite, I'm much more economical about what I write. They're probably better observations, if I'm honest, because I'm really careful because I know I can't scrub it all out and start again. I write too much if I type. And I end up being a little less present in the room because I'm doing all of this. I'm like, oh God, what happened there? I was too busy writing a paragraph, right? So what's your techniques when you start to do them? Is it better to handwrite or is it better to type? It's your choice, but be careful that one of them doesn't distract you from the lesson that's actually happening in front of you and you're focusing more on your notes and not the lesson. Some people can do both brilliantly. I just can't. Okay. Now, this is absolutely essential. Do not transcribe the lesson. There's we have a lesson observation form. I'll just flick forward for a sec. So this is what we use at Sussex. Wherever you are, you might use a different one. And we have this notes page on the second page. Now, this isn't a transcription of the lesson. It is questions, comments, possibly the odd hint. I do little hints sometimes in bubbles. So it's here's a great entrance routine. How did you get here? Has it always been like this? Talk to me about this journey. And what you're doing is you're sticking little pins in here of questions you're going to ask in the dialogue. You're saving yourself so much time. They don't need to know it's 12:05 and the children are walking in unless the lesson was supposed to start at 11:50. In which case, why is it 12:05? 12:05 is relevant if the timing is too quick or too slow, but then there's a question, why did you bring them in at 12:05? The lesson was supposed to start at 11:50. Talk to me about that, right? And it's not pokey, it's not sort of passive aggressive, why did you do that? It's a question we're going to ask. These are aid memoirs for questions for the dialogue. That's what this section is, okay? So be positive and encouraging as much as possible. So it's really nice if the strengths are often by some experienced mentors done very quickly and then the targets seem really big. You're like, well, hang on a minute. If it make sure we do emphasize what's going well because really good student teachers and new and good ECTs they want to know what's going well because otherwise if they don't know what's going well they'll go, well, they didn't mention that, so I probably need to change that. Let them know what to keep the same. It's like, whoa, don't change that. That's brill. You've got skills for days in that area. Don't move it. All right. So this is what the lesson plan looks like. We've got some guidance that we use that we find really useful. We like it to be subject or phase specific. So if you're primary, it's phase specific. If you're secondary, it's subject specific. Clear targets, clear strengths, at least 3, and they should have detail. I'm going to show you some examples in a sec. Areas of development, at least 2, but really importantly, here's the area that I want you to develop, but here are some ideas about how you might be able to do that might make things move a little smoother next lesson. And then we use the language of the ITT ECF. So we talk about modeling, we talk about questioning, we would talk about prior knowledge, we'll talk about assessment. So it's making sure that we are enabling them to get their entitlement through the feedback that we're giving them. It's a bit like you don't want to be a teacher, you don't want to observe a teacher that never teaches the curriculum. They teach something random. Well, that's no use, right? We do need to be able to, yes, we can go outside of the ITT UCS, of course we can. It doesn't mention creativity, sadly, so we can certainly talk about that in what we're doing. But we do need to be ensuring that we're matching the ITT UCF as much as possible. Now, this is obviously not a very useful one, but useful to show you. It's on our previous formats, don't worry about that. But the mentors ignored. The first one is supposed to be S3. You can see there's a star there. They're talking about routines. They're talking about formative assessment using cold calling. But we don't really know which, using a range of strategies, but in what way? It doesn't say anything. And just curriculum knowledge was popped down as strength 3. But what? Was it like from a science perspective? Did they know about acids and hydrogen ions? Did they know about the Norman conquest? You know what I mean? What was it that they did well? You must be specific. Now, this is where this is really, really poor. Adaptive teaching is an enormous area, and there's this mentor saying that's an area for development. But what area of adaptive teaching? Was it not pitched high enough? Was it not was it not scaffolded enough? What was it? And how am I going to do it? It's left blank. So that's not this mentor showing their knowledge of how this new teacher can improve. So yeah, please not like that. Like this. This is what we want. Now, these have been matched against the new Sussex ITE curriculum areas. They're nice and detailed. Here's an example of areas of development and how to improve them. So again, I put the little books on these. If you wanted to pause and rewind on those, you can read them. Now, nothing I ever put up is what is perfect because it doesn't exist. And that's the trick with observations. You'll see something and go, that's great. I'm going to write about that. And then you'll see something and go, okay. I think we could work on that bit. And you start writing about it. You might get to the end of the lesson, and you should fill this in during the lesson. Get to the end of the lesson and go, oh, there's a bunch of stuff I didn't mention. Doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. We are taking snapshots of that lesson because there's an infinite number of incidences in that lesson that could be recorded. One teacher, 34 children. I mean, I can't even do the maths about what the permutations of that are. So we just pick moments and go, oh, critical incident there, critical incident in there. That's a positive one. That's one that I think we could be talking about because I think there's room for improvement there and I know you can do it, right? So we just grab them as they happen. You might sit for a while and go, am I seeing a pattern? Yes, I'm seeing a pattern. Yes, I'm seeing a pattern. I'm going to grab this pattern and I'm going to start writing about it. And then there could be other stuff you bring up in the dialogue to go, something I didn't write down was this. I'm going to ask you some questions. So the use of that, the question sheet at the end, which I show you now, this is done by one of our wonderful English tutors. She's absolutely amazing. And you can see she's done some little bits of dialogue about what's going on, nice things you subtly reminded them. But here, the conversation, how can we encourage other students to join in? So she's watching a lovely moment, but then thinking, how can we take that even further? It's lovely. It's lovely. Some people put a big Q. I put a big Q to remind me. This was beautifully typed and highlighted. Wonderful example. Post-lesson discussion, really important in our coaching arena, because this is where we're going to ask lots and lots and lots of questions and be super non-directive as much as possible. Now, we will be moving, right? So post-lesson dialogue at the beginning is going to feel a bit directive because you might have a student teacher or an ECT who's frozen. And they're like, I don't know. I don't know. My first lesson as a student teacher, I don't remember any of it. I don't remember any of it. I had a projector, shows how old I am, projector shining up into my face, and all I wanted to do was run out the room. So I could not have engaged in a post-lesson dialogue after that lesson apart from, I don't know. I don't know. So having been frozen myself, I understand how we can freeze. So don't be too frustrated or disappointed in your new teacher if they're frozen to begin with, but they can't still be frozen after a couple of weeks. Okay, they have to have some opinion about what went on and what was good and how they can improve it. So lots of research on this as well, which I'll show you in a sec. Now, here's some practical things. It's much better if it doesn't happen straight after the lesson because you're much more likely to get a rabbit in the headlights. Then it's like, I don't know, adrenaline and cortisol are all over the place, particularly to begin with. So time to reflect. Do not hand over the lesson observation form. You should have completed it during the lesson. Please don't do it after. It's got to be live. It's got to be fresh. Do not edit. Just leave it as is. Doesn't matter if it's got typos. Okay, it really doesn't matter. Give them some time to reflect, maybe half an hour if that's what you've got. Next day's a bit late, I always feel. I think it's better. Otherwise, they're going to go home and worry about it, and some worry disproportionately. And then if the next day you go, oh, it was a great lesson, or words to that effect, non-judgmental. And they go, oh, God, I worried about it all night. So same day is best. So give them time, obviously private space, not the staff room. Ask questions. So a simple one you can start with. I mean, a lot of people start with, how do you think it went? And it just opens them up. I got no problem with that. I know there's some people like, oh, it's a really boring question. Why ask that first? If that's the first thing that comes in your head, say it. It's fine. It's still a question, right? We're not going to be punitive to ourselves about this either. Otherwise, we clam up and we'll be two rabbits in headlights. So, but a nice one is to start with, what were your thoughts in the plan of that lesson? What did you want to achieve? Having the lesson plan in front of you, go, talk me through your planning is quite a nice way just to open it up. Go, how did you end up with this plan? Yeah. And then again, we've got our questions that we've done in the written feedback by the side, and we really should be drilling down on individual pupils and groups of pupils. So, how were the front row responding? Tell me how they got on, right? Preferably starting with a group that did well. Preferably starting with a group that did well. And then you could move to, but what about row two? How do you think Jason did this lesson? Can you talk to me about Jason? What do you know about Jason? What's his situation? And quite often you unearth that they haven't looked at any data about Jason. They haven't spoken to the form tutor about Jason. You're like, well, what should you probably be going to do about Jason? And they start to make their to-do list. Okay. And then through that conversation, you might end up with your coaching focus for the next week, which is likely to be pupils like Jason. Okay. So ask questions, coaching techniques, but active listening, sitting there and getting their answers. All right. Dialogue will change. Like I said, it will move from more directive from your part to non-directive. Said this before, do not describe the lesson. They lived it, they were in it. They don't need you to transcribe it. And then use your notes. So we've got some guidance for this, encouraging them to speak, asking questions, using coaching techniques. Do not describe it. Okay. Research for you to look at in your own time is pretty much what I've already said. Now, I'm going to finish on this. We are all, I'm sure, experts at adaptive teaching for the pupils that you teach in school as a mentor, right? I'm sure you're all magnificent at that. And, you know, at a drop of a hat, you can adapt your lesson, get this child to do something almost completely different to this child over here because they've got different needs, okay? Now, we're not as good as a group of adults in anywhere I've ever worked at being inclusive for our colleagues, yeah? We're all tired and a bit stretched thin, and you just want all adults just to sort of get on with it. And it just doesn't work like that. And the trouble is, we are losing some excellent teachers because they don't feel that they belong. There's very little adaptation for particular needs that they've got, and the environment just seems too much. And it's a criminal shame. It's a criminal shame, right? To lose people that could be wonderful teachers who would empathize with a lot of the pupils that we've got in school. So, what I want to just talk about for this last bit is the importance of inclusive mentoring. And it starts with us as mentors and tutors. We're that front line in front of this new teacher going, I believe in you. I hear you. I want to hear your story. How can I support you? Right? How can I help you to help you with your challenges? Because what we're not doing, let me make this really clear, is carrying somebody through their first year or two of teaching because they've got to be able to support themselves. So, what we're going to do is create environments where people want to share, where we can give some advice, where we can point them in the right direction, and we can make reasonable adjustments to help people through tricky bits that eventually we hope that they won't need those adjustments later on, but they are reasonable. But it is about our open frame of mind to listen to begin with. Most of the time we get problems with inclusive mentoring because the mentor doesn't really know that there's something going on with that new teacher and therefore didn't even know to make adaptations. Now, if they won't open up to you, there's not an awful lot we can do about that. They're adults, they'll have to own that decision if something goes wrong. But if our student teachers do open up, when they open up, let's be positive about it, when they open up, we do need to respond appropriately with care and nurture and support and guidance. All right. Now, there's some I haven't got a book on this because I think I want to go through it. Schools, Michael Arrow. Oh, absolute ledge. Schools are full of unwritten and unspoken rules, and we know that. We know that. So we've had cases of student teachers, neurodiverse student teachers, I'll just say who they are, needing quiet space to bring down that cognitive load and reduce the overstimulation at lunchtime. I mean, I can't, I mean, I'm an extrovert. So I like being around noise and people all the time. There's a lot of people I work with that don't, and they need special space. Like, so my bag gets filled up with lots of activity and people. I know people I work with that their energy bag gets depleted by being around lots of people, and we need to respond accordingly. So everyone sits together at lunchtime in the staff room may not be appropriate. And if that new teacher doesn't want to sit with you at lunchtime, that's their choice. They're not to be slighted or they're setting themselves apart. It's what they need to recharge their batteries. And we have to realign ourselves and open our minds to what other people need. Okay, can be very difficult to begin with. Yeah, really difficult to begin with. If you're ingrained in certain habits and what's the word, a culture within your school. Now, we as mentors and tutors are agents of social change. We can make things different. We can educate other people within our schools about how we can adapt for new people coming into the profession. Workload behavior and lack of support are reasons that people leave. And we all know we've got an attrition problem, and it's not just in the UK, it's across the globe. Okay. 40% of IT never make it to teaching. Now, that is a shocking statistic. That was back in 2008. So I probably should put a new one in there because I'm sure it's worse. And then the rest are gone after, 40% of the rest are gone after 5 years. And overt criticism is a trigger. Now, critique is fine. Feedback is fine. Targets and development are part of how we develop and get better, right? And improve our practice for our pupils. But criticism is not. An overt criticism it's not helpful to anybody. We can't develop if all we are is stressed. Think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs and all that. There is a lack of research. Now, that's not a typo. That is the name St. Evans and that's an authentic voice of an autistic teacher. So really interesting. Read that. And they need to feel like they belong. Please don't have a Christmas party and don't invite them. I don't know anyone that wouldn't be offended and sad by that. So please do encourage them to come along and to be a part of the team. Now, at Sussex, and it's available to other people as well, happy to share. We've worked with a whole group of providers in the South Coast. It's the South Coast Providers Group. We've got a list of what we think are reasonable adjustments. So if somebody needs further inclusive strategies with certain things that we can draw upon. So that's available to you to have a look. I'm just going to whiz through these very quickly before I finish. Some aspects of teacher education that your new teacher might find difficult and some possible strategies. Okay. So poor working memory is quite common in a lot of student teachers that we get. You think that you've told them to do something, they're like, oh my God, I completely forgot. They missed a meeting. I would add to this, it's really important in your mentor meetings to look at their diary together. Always have your diaries out and go through with them again. Have you got the right thing in here? Are you following your diary? But summarize meetings with emails. Just go, well, we said that in the meeting. Just in the meeting, just go, right, I'm just going to write this down. I'm going to send this off to you and make sure that you are engaging in the meetings. If we're boring, people just aren't listening and they switch off. Disorganization is a common issue for novice teachers. For a lot of them, make the deadlines clear and remind them on a daily basis. Ensure, I want to say, I'm just going to say diary, 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 diary. It's really important that everything is written down. Restlessness, procrastination. Procrastination, I'm finding more and more is an issue. Like, oh, it's just not finished yet. It's good enough. Get it done. Just teach it, get it done, right? You're gonna have to be quite firm about that one. Sensitivity to rejection. Now, that comes from criticism and judgmental mentoring, where you're like, oh, that wasn't very good, was it? Oh, how does that make you feel? What happened over there? I mean, I know none of you are going to do that, but I have seen it before. And we do need to make sure that we're using positive language or make it about the pupils. Make it about the pupils. Make it about the kids' work. Let's have a look at Emily's work. Let's get all the books together and let's see which kid did which. Because so often I don't see student teachers checking books and work, and they really should. That's how they're looking into. That's their crystal ball into how kids have done. Too many unspoken workplace rules. I really should have put that as number one. It is incredibly difficult to navigate school life as a teacher when the only place you've ever been in school was as a pupil. All right. It's very different from that perspective. You must be honest about rules. If school starts at 8:30, some people will think that getting in at 8:27 is okay. Now, that gives me the heebie-jeebies hearing that, right? If you actually want them in at 7:45 and they can, because I'm thinking of childcare and travel and everything, say that to them. It's much better if you get her at 7:45. I'll be here at 7:45. We'll have a cup of tea together. We'll make sure you're ready for the day, right? Don't just leave it until it becomes an issue. Be honest about rules. If they're supposed to do duties, they do duties. Each school will be different, and student teachers are not to compare to other schools. Because I would argue if one school's giving them duties and the other one isn't making them do it, the one that's getting the duties is getting a better experience because they're exposed to more school life. I'm sure you'd agree with me. And the one that's not doing duties is not getting the best experience. Okay. So social rules, that stuff like the lunchtime, the breaks, all of that kind of stuff, let them talk to you about what they need. Their lunchtime is their lunchtime. It shouldn't have extra rules put on it, right? And it can cause overload. Sometimes too honest or too nice, saying exactly what's in their mind is not necessarily something that goes down very well in teaching or in the staff room. So taking someone aside and saying, do you know what, that's potentially a bit of a gaffe. Can you tell me why you said that? I'd like to understand where that comes from, rather than, and this happens all the time. Oh, they said that. Oh, they said this. That's not helpful. It's just going to ostracize them even more. Clarity of expectations. I've got to be so careful about this, about being sarcastic and flippant and using idioms as well, especially if you've got international students. Idioms are a nightmare. And don't flip flop, right? So if you said one thing one week, don't change it the next week. That's going to be really confusing. Last minute changes are a disaster for all new teachers, not just teachers that might need extra support and guidance, all of them. It can cause an awful lot of heartbreak, I would say, because you've planned all of this stuff and then it doesn't happen, or suddenly you've got to teach something different. So let's make sure they know what they're teaching weeks and weeks ahead. Being a perfectionist, we've mentioned, you've just got to tell them to teach it, co-plan together and say, right, you're teaching that tomorrow. That lesson's ready. That's ready to go. You're not going to do any more to that. And then they'll see that they can still deliver a really good lesson without extra planning. Loneliness is common. So be mindful of that, that when if they are taking themselves away, it's because of overstimulation, not because they don't feel that they belong or that they've got no one to hang out with. Sensory overload is something that I do really understand. I can't work in bright lights. I don't like too much noise, and I can't bear smells, right? So if I was trying to work or socialize in a staff room that had all of those things going on, I probably would want to take myself away. Okay. So them taking themselves away is not a sign that they're not going to be a good teacher. They maybe just want their own space. So don't judge them for it. Ask them about it. Okay. Those of us with very pale eyes also find LED lighting very, very harsh. Sounds really bit pathetic when I say it out loud, but it really used to really, yeah, I had to leave an office once because of that. And then stigma associated with any of the things that I've already talked about, as particularly neurodiversity or anxiety or any other disability or health condition that somebody might have. And it's about us listening to them, being on their side, and as much as possible making adaptations that still mean they can meet the teacher standards at the end. So the reasonable adaptations are so important to look at. If someone's supposed to be teaching, my hands go funny there, 8 lessons by Christmas, you can't go down to 4 and think, oh, that's going to be okay. They're going to meet the teacher standards. They're not teaching enough. But 6 would be appropriate. Okay, so it's about, are we still on track? We might have a slightly less steep, shallower rise, yeah, than some other student teachers, but we're still going to get there in the end. So still being mindful, they still have to be able to be an ECT at the end, or as an ECT, they still have to manage to get through the ECT years and continue into teaching. So I hope that's been useful for you. I hope it wasn't too long. Apologies if it is. You can skip bits if it was. If there's any questions at all, for those of us at Sussex, it's the tutor that you would contact first of all. So primary or secondary, you'd contact the tutor. If it's a particular mentoring query and you want to talk more about mentoring, you contact me. That's absolutely fine. My email was at the beginning, fb64@sussex.ac.uk. If you're external to Sussex and you're interested in more to do with mentoring, again, just get in touch. I'm always happy to talk about anything to do with mentoring, and I hope you found this session useful. Thanks ever so much for listening.